Hello, hello, everyone. Hello, Facebook. Hello, Instagram. It is In Touch with Your Soul Thursday. We are going to be diving in
Hello, Facebook.
a little bit more. Hello, Instagram. It is In Touch with Your Soul. Excuse me, as we are getting some feedback here. Okay, so let's get this started again. So it is In Touch with Your Soul Thursday. We're going to continue to dive into I Can See Clearly Now by Dr. Wayne Dyer. If you would like to follow along, you can find the link in my bio or attached to this post, and to grab the book for yourself if you'd like to follow along. So we are on chapter 3. The year is 1950, and I am in 4th grade at Arthur Elementary School in Detroit. This is my very first time attending school while living in my reunited family. Each day at precisely 2:45 p.m., if the entire class has behaved reasonably well, meaning there's no talking out of turn, our teacher, Mrs. Ingalls, reads The Secret Garden to us. I am enthralled listening to her, particularly by the way she makes all of the characters comes alive. In the classroom, I'm in my assigned seat, going through the motions of memorizing my multiplication tables, reviewing the week's spelling words, looking at maps for our geography lesson, practicing cursive handwriting, and all of the other tedious details of my 4th grade school day. But secretly, I'm eagerly anticipating listening to The Secret Garden at 2:45. So I sit at my desk and gaze at the clock on the wall. As I sit here at my desk some 62 years later, I can see the words Seth Thomas in my imagination on the face of that clock in the classroom. I seem to be the only kid in class who is obsessed with the story unfolding each afternoon. And I notice that many of my classmates seems obvious to the fact, excuse me, that if they don't behave, the story won't be forthcoming. I am 10 years old and have already become aware that I don't see the world the way the other children around me do. I have discovered that people will listen to me if I speak with conviction. I have also learned that I enjoy spending most of my time in my own inner world, exploring ideas that my contemporaries never seem to consider. Here in Mrs. Ingalls' 4th grade classroom, I realize how much power I have to make things happen that are important to me. Each day, I voluntarily assume the role of enforcer of the silence that Mrs. Ingalls so cherishes. If the class gets even slightly unruly, I leave my seat and remind the offenders that they're jeopardizing our secret garden time, and that I won't stand for this destructive behavior. They listen and they calm down, not because they want to hear the story, but because I take position of authority. This is an illuminating experience for the 10-year-old me. I realize it's happened before in the foster homes where I live. Now here again, in a brand new school, when I speak with confidence and kindness, I'm listened to. Anyone misbehaving in a way that prevents Ms. Ingalls from reading to us is brought to order by me without threats or unkindness. Oh, how I love just closing my eyes and listening to the magic that is, for me, my own secret garden. The story, written by Frances Ogden Burnett in 1911, is about 10-year-old orphan Mary Lennox, who is sent from India to live in England after her parents both died in a cholera epidemic. She arrives in England, a dour, hurt, negative young girl who feels that her parents didn't want her. The story describes her discovery of a whole new world that changes her outlook on her life. Here I am, 10-year-old boy, just having spent the majority of my life with similar feelings of being unwanted. Now, listening to a story that speaks to another way of looking at life. The idea of there being a secret place either in the world or in one's mind fascinates me. I listen mesmerized by conversations that Mary and her sickly friend Colin have with the flowers and a bird called Robin Redbreast. Robins fly around me too, building the nest and chirping away while I walk home from school at the end of each day. I engage in conversations with these new avian friends all the way home, living in my own imaginary secret garden, where sickness, weakness disappear, and where positive attitude is the antidote to all suffering. I feel the exquisite power of the words read by Mrs. Ingalls and creates my own secret garden to escape into a world where all things are possible. Here I talk to the animals and the flowers and feel the presence of real magic in my life. Coming to this new home to live with my family isn't nearly as comfortable as living in someone else's home. Bill, my new stepfather, drinks a lot when he does his argument. He is argumentative and mean. But I managed to stay somewhat oblivious to his ranting, largely because of my awareness that in my imagination, I can create a secret space, much like Mary Lennox's garden in England. In this space, no one is allowed entry without permission. I am fascinated by this idea that life is not restricted to what I see and hear with my senses. I discovered that I can be here in this world in my body, and I can also get outside of the limitations of my physical self and live within my own private world. In the secret garden, I hear Mrs. Ingalls speak about healing people of serious illness and think to myself, if Mary can do that, so can I. If Mary and Dickon and Colin and all of our secret garden companions can talk to the animals and listen to the trees, then so can I. My imagination soars. I envision myself as a magician who can do anything he puts his mind to. I see guidance for me in all of nature. I learn how to go within and clear my inner world of everything that interferes with the bliss of my inner peace. I make a decision that Bill can never get to me with his craziness or his obsessive tirades over issues that exist only in his own impaired mind. I have a secret garden of my own, which I realize I've treated too often in previous years of living in foster homes. Here in this new environment, living in an undersized home with 3 people who are essentially strangers, one of whom spends his days and nights drinking beer, I'm giving a gift that is immensely beneficial. The gift is awareness of my secret garden. The place within me that has no restrictions, no obstacles, and where I can create for myself a way of living that is immune to any and all influences that might bring me down. Throughout the years to come, living in an environment of verbal and alcoholic abuse that is the norm, I have secured within my imagination a refuge that I treasure. And I'm anxious to tell others about it. Mrs. Ingalls reading The Secret Garden for 30 minutes at the end of each school day is quite likely not memorable for the other kids in the 4th grade classroom. For me, it was a benefaction that sparked a fire within me for which I am always grateful. It was the beginning of an awareness that I have something inside of me that trumps what goes on outside of me. My own secret garden where all things are possible. I can see clearly now. Even after 6 decades have passed, I often look back at that classroom within Mrs. Ingalls and think about how divine providence was working on my behalf. Somehow, I was guided into her classroom by a force that was conspiring to set a fire within me that would propel me to write and speak about the ideas presented in that novel written over a century ago now. Before beginning to write, I can see clearly now. I decided to peruse The Secret Garden again, to remind myself of what had ignited such a provocative interest in my young self. The following passage, which the author writes about 10-year-old Mary Lennox, truly piqued my attention. She was a great believer in magic. Secretly, she quite believed that Dickon worked magic, of course good magic, on everything near him, and that was why people liked him so much, and wild creatures knew he was their friend. The excitement that this idea germinated in me back in 1950 was to become the impetus for a body of work encompassing my entire adult life. At the time, I was unaware. I spent a lifetime examining and exploring this idea of there being a solitary chamber within all of us that, when nurtured and tested, gives us a power to live our lives at extraordinary levels. In a universe that has no accidents, a universe that is divinely orchestrated, it seems clear to me that Mrs. Ingalls, my prescient fourth grade teacher, was in my life to awaken a passion within me for going way beyond the ordinary. This experience opened my life to a passion for greatness, for achieving miracles, and for believing that there are no limits to what one can accomplish if one tunes in to the powers of the invisible world that is our birthright. As a 10-year-old boy, I was introduced to two ideas that were guideposts for the journey that was to become my destiny. The first is that people will respond for the benefit of all concerned if you speak to them with confidence in a non-judgmental manner. The second guidepost is that there's a secret garden where miracles and magic abound, and it's available to anyone who makes the choice to visit there. Of course, I didn't realize at the time that those hours sitting and listening to the secret garden were in a reality my grooming for life's work. Those were purely thrilling moments for me when the bell rang and class was dismissed. All the way home, I traipsed through my own secret garden. It was a passion that was ignited then, and I still feel almost giddy when I contemplate what all of us are capable of experiencing when we allow ourselves to reach our own full potential. Years later, as I read Candide, Voltaire's best-known work, I was reminded of Miss Ingalls' class. After traveling the world and seeing the worst of humankind, the title character royally explains at the end of this satirical tale that the violence and plunder of kings could not compare with the productive and peaceful lives of those who minded their own business and cultivated their own garden. Every time I read this passage from Voltaire, I see the 10-year-old boy I was contemplating his own secret garden, and unbeknownst to him, setting the stage for a lifetime of encouraging others to eschew the ordinary life and truly tend to their own garden. How beautiful it is that we get to have the gift of imagination that no one can enter in our mind. We have the choice to not have no one else have control over us in our own mind. We get to choose what we want to imagine, what we want our world, our inner world to be. And no one needs to know about it. How beautiful is that? You can create whatever you want. And if you hold it in your thoughts and you have that feeling that match, that same vibration, you can hold it in your hand. I hope you really enjoyed this reading. I sure have. It's always a great reminder. And then we'll see you again next week. Have a great day. Take care.